Mike being the star child and the oldest, who was already in med school.
I mean, they didn't tell me to become a doctor. I made the decision on my own.
In this episode, we talk about our personal experiences and different paths to medicine. You know, everyone's journey to medicine is different and unique, and we wanted to share our personal experiences so you can better make a decision for yourself. Should you go to medical school? What questions should you think about medical school? And some of the mindset things around medicine in general. So calm your mood, clear your mind, and enjoy the show. Why would someone want to become a doctor?
Let me start with maybe one of the most common reasons. My parents want me to become doctors.
That's very common in the Asian community for sure.
Yeah.
I think a common thing that I hear a lot is people say that like, I want to go into medicine because I like to help people. I think I hear that very often.
Right.
And to that, I would say that
Not good enough.
the want to help people is not good enough to want to be in medicine or just to be happy in medicine.
What do you mean by not good enough?
Well, personally, I wish I would have known a lot of things before pulling the trigger and pursuing medicine, because it's not all rainbows and butterflies. You know, it's not even like Scrubs or House. You know, the process is difficult. It is trying, and it'll take a lot from you. And most importantly, it'll take time from you. And time is something you can never get back. You need something internal, something driving you to really want to pursue and be successful and happy in medicine. You know, I think the happiness part is the key distinguishing factor, because I know a lot of people who are unhappy in medicine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like you said too, just saying you want to help people is so general. It's so vague. If you want to help people, there are a lot of things you can do to do that.
Pretty much every job helps people.
Exactly. So
name a job that doesn't help people, I guess. That's a harder question.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, so if you want to go into a field like medicine, which is notoriously incredibly challenging and competitive and difficult, they also want the people who have put a lot of thought into doing it. And just saying helping people just proves that you haven't really put a lot of thought into it.
Right. I mean, you guys are on the medical school admission committees, right? So it's like, you guys know exactly how to sift through people who are likely or unlikely to succeed in medicine.
Yeah, when someone says that I want to become a doctor because I want to help people, then a common follow-up question I have for them is, why not become a nurse or a pharmacist or a physical therapist? Like everyone in the healthcare, all the healthcare workers help people.
Yeah.
So then that's the follow-up question I ask, and I see what their answer is from there. To see if they've thought about this decision. But I think in a bigger picture, if you haven't thought about it and your idea of being a doctor is just to help people, I don't think you're going to be sustainable. Because there is no, I feel like your internal source of motivation to get through everything isn't strong enough.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. And I think there was probably two common answers for people who write in their personal statements or say they want to go to med school who haven't thought about it. They usually say they want to help people, and the second one would be they like science. And it's kind of funny. Like, I agree with exactly what Mike said, where obviously every job in the world does that. But even from an admissions committee standpoint, if someone says that they want to help people or they like science, I don't even count that as a reason. Those are the baseline minimum requirements to even consider it. That's the baseline. If you don't like those things, then you shouldn't even consider applying. What more? You know, there has to be something more than just that.
It's kind of the same question as what makes you a good candidate? And they say I'm ready to work hard. Yeah. Working hard is the baseline.
It's a minimum requirement.
That is the ticket to entry.
Right. Yeah.
But what more?
Exactly. And I mean, that's really what I think a lot of people, and what we can explore is why would someone want to go to medicine then? If they do want more than to help people, why?
Yeah. So I think back to what I said before, one of the reasons why is because your parents have somehow put a narrative into your head, or not just parents, your family. If you grew up in a family with a lot of doctors, or if you grew up in a family with no doctors, there's some sort of societal narrative that you grew up with, thinking that doctors are like the ultimate goal.
Right.
And I think part of it has to do with the prestige and the status that comes with being a doctor too. So those things to me kind of go together.
Was there pressure on your guys' end from your parents?
I mean, for
me, there was.
Yeah.
for you,
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was one being. There's many reasons why I had pressure. First reason was just typical. Yeah, my parents are Asian. Asian parents want you to become a doctor, dentist, engineer,
Pharmacist.
lawyer, pharmacist. There's like the 5 things you could do. You could be. And Mike, being the star child and the oldest, who was already in med school, he set the bar pretty high, whether he meant to or not.
I mean, they didn't tell me to become a doctor because I made the decision on my own.
I know, but whether you wanted to or not, the bar was set very high.
Yeah.
And so there was obviously pressure from my parents, like, oh, like you should do something like him. And then also there's internal ego on my end of like, oh, my brother did that, then I have to prove it to myself that I could also do that. So obviously that played a factor in me deciding to go to medicine. And the third reason would be I just didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
I was in a position where I didn't really think about my future that much. And so it seemed like a pretty difficult, but at least it was an option.
Yeah.
You know, and I hadn't really thought about any other options. So I was like, I'm going to go for it.
I actually echo that. You know, when I was in undergrad, I wanted to be in science. Like I wanted to do genetics research, you know. And then I worked in a lab and then following that, I worked in a tissue banking company. And I just was not content with where I was at or my potential future prospects, you know, in that industry. And I also didn't know what to do. And I also felt the pressure from my parents, and they're just like, oh, you should go into the medical field. So then I was considering a mid-level medical, you know, like I was considering PA,
Right.
Considered going back to school and getting a nursing degree at one point also. And my parents, in, you know, Asian fashion, were just like, you should just go all the way, just
Go
be
for
a
the most
doctor.
prestigious.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, there were parts of me that wanted to pursue medicine beforehand, but I never pulled the trigger on it, or never felt as though it was my true calling. And you find people who that's what they want to do. You know, they're just like, I'm gonna be a general surgeon, period. I'm gonna be a neurosurgeon, period. I don't mind the sleepless nights. I don't mind, you know, 80-hour work weeks going into practice. That's not me, man.
What do you think it takes when you're that young to have that ferocious motivation to want to become like a neurosurgeon and then stick through with it? What do you think it takes to be like to develop that?
I think they need a life experience, like a parent or a relative or something whose life was drastically changed by a neurosurgeon or one of those specialties. I think someone, it would be hard. I'd be hard pressed to find someone who would willingly want to sign up for all of the stress and the hours it takes.
Yeah.
You know.
It's a lot of damage.
Yeah. I had dinner with a buddy of mine 2 days ago. He's FM, and his wife, newly, they're just married. She's OBGYN, and she's practicing now, and she's still Q2 call. Like, and then she still gets like one weekend a month or something to herself.
Jeez.
As an attending.
So first of all, I think a lot of parents who tell their kids or at least from the stories I hear, a lot of parents who tell their kids to become doctors, those parents aren't doctors themselves, or those parents don't know what it takes to become a doctor. I think it's just the responsibility of the parent to push your child to reach for the stars, you know, like to be your number one cheerleader. But when you don't know what it takes to become a doctor and then you just blindly try to force them into it, it can cause a lot of problems.
Agreed.
Because I do hear on the other side of the coin is a lot of parents who are doctors, they're telling their child to not become a doctor.
Yeah.
I hear that a lot.
I would probably tell my
Same.
child to not become a doctor too, having gone through this.
Yeah.
Right. I would tell them to think very, very hard about it and what
Yeah.
they really, really want
Yeah.
their life to look like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even then, like, I don't know if it's even worth all the the trials that you have to go through.
That's a bold claim, yeah.
What?
That's a bold claim coming from people who've done it, that you don't think the trials were worth it.
Well, I don't know. You'd have to like evaluate you have to look at your values and look at what you want out of life. And the common thing that happens is that, like in your case, or like anyone similar, where they're like, I don't know what I want to do with my life, but I know that I'm capable, and I will just choose the path of a medical doctor because I know I can study and I know I can do well in school. So why not just do that? Yeah. And you just kind of just drift into that field, and then you lose all the years of your life doing something that you don't actually enjoy. So you have to really look at what you want.
It is a very safe option. Like, you know that if you put in the work and you get through this very structured training regimen, you will make X amount of money. Like, I guess that's part of the appeal from a parent, you know?
Yeah. It's low risk, high reward type of field.
It perceived low risk, but it's pretty risky.
Well, low risk in that if you do everything that you're told to do, then you will most likely make it.
If you succeed in doing everything that you're told to do.
Yeah, if you succeed in everything you're told to do.
What about those students who pull out massive loans to go to med school and then don't succeed in passing med school?
Yeah.
And then now they're just really, really screwed in the system. They have no other career options available to them because they didn't get a degree and they have no experience, but now they're just in debt.
Yeah.
I guess I was talking from the point of once you start your first day in medical school, like you've already made it in, then the risk is relatively low going forward.
Yeah.
Just keep doing what you're told to do, and you'll be taken care of, basically. But getting into medical school is, I think, a pretty big gamble if you're not competitive.
I think there's something to be said about Caribbean medical schools, you know, because they'll admit all these people, and it's like the attrition rate is like what?
Trap.
Like their class sizes are like 1,000 students.
Yeah, but only like what, a couple, like 300-400 make it to the end.
It's they're a cash cow.
Right.
That's really all they're about.
So all these students who didn't make it, you know, are in debt. You know, I think the average amount of debt that the medical student graduates with is what, like 300 grand?
I think it's I don't want to
Like 250 to 300.
Yeah.
It's like 50 to 60K for a year.
Yeah.
Ish. But if you go to the Caribbean, it's way more.
Yeah, that's true.
The struggle is even the Caribbean students too, if they do succeed, it's still difficult to land a residency position. So they could be in limbo for X amount of years with an MD and still not have any training program to prescribe or become an actual clinician.
Yeah. The other thing to consider too is like, yes, once you get into medical school, if you're able to pass all these tests, all these hoops, and you become a doctor, you know, get into residency, you also have to think about the opportunity cost, you know, the cost of sacrificing your 20s. You know, what could you have done with those 10 years of your life? You know, I'm reading this book now called Decisive, and it's one of the things that people don't consider when making a decision is, what am I giving up to pursue this one path? You know, and I think that we gave up a lot. You know,
Sure.
Now being on the other side of things after training, you know, all of my non-medical friends are married, have houses, have kids. You know, and the majority of us are, you know, still paying off debt. You know, a lot of us aren't married. Some of us are. Most of us are not homeowners. You know.
Yeah. And to add to that, while you're in training, you have to just go wherever they tell you to go. Like if you're doing very well and you're like near the top of your class, then you have more options. But if you're lower down in your class, then if you have to go way out into, I don't know, Nebraska or Wisconsin or wherever, then you just have to go, you know, and you stay there for years. And then after you finish med school, if you're still not competitive and you have to go to a residency program that you don't want to go to, then you stay there for years again too.
Right.
So you just got to do what you're told to do.
Yeah.
So you're also giving up all those opportunity costs of building relationships with different people because you're constantly moving around and your circle is constantly changing too.
Yeah.
So.
And, you know, moving around, medical training keeps you away from your family. There is a graph out there as to who you spend most of your time with. And in your 20s, like, you're spending a lot of time with friends and your loved ones. But going forward, like, our parents are not young, you know. It's like I wasn't really in the same geographical area as my parents for the last 10 years, you know. So that's another consideration, because I think a lot of people who go into medicine because they're like really family oriented, and you know their parents want them to go into medicine and they want to take care of people and stuff like that. But you know, oftentimes you are going to be separated from your family and your sort of home base.
Right. I'm sure there are those who are lucky enough to train in their own hometown or the comfort of their family, or to have them move with them to go along on that journey. Because you are roping in a lot of people when you go into medicine. I think Mike and I have talked about this before, where not on this podcast, but like it's just internally, where it's selfish to go to medicine, even though the occupation itself is selfless. Like you're treating a lot of people, regardless of whether you know them or not, because you know we take the oath of doing no harm, and you know everyone gets adequate care attention from you.
Right.
But in doing so, you are dragging all your family and friends who are committed to you to support you through that process. So it's a weird double-edged sword.
Yeah, it's very true. And I've seen it wreck families. Like I've seen divorce. I've seen, you know, kids like you know, a parent separated from their kids and stuff, you know, actually multiple divorces. So it's definitely tough on any relationship, you know, especially if that person you're with is not in medicine, because they don't understand, you know.
I get a lot of messages from our students asking me, what should I do? A doctor looks like a very promising career. What should I do?
I think I'd really have to sit down and talk to that person and see if being a doctor is within their wishes, not because of the acclaim or the money, because both of those are declining, truthfully. To see if this person really at their core enjoys medicine and taking care of patients.
So let's just make these people teenagers or like in their early 20s. So they still got time. What would you advise them to do?
I would tell them, if they haven't already, I would tell them to spend some time in medicine, you know, not just shadowing the outpatient clinician, you know, but shadow someone who you might want to, whose specialty is one that you might want to pursue, you know. If you want to be an intensivist, then you should spend time in the intensive care unit, because that is a very sad place and it's a very stressful place. And I remember in med school, a lot of people were like, oh, I want to be an ICU doctor, just throwing it around because they thought it was cool. But as soon as they actually were in the unit, it's a lot of stress, you know, and they changed their mind. They wanted to pursue something else, you know?
Yeah, I think that's huge, getting the experience, because I think that people have these notions of what the lifestyle of a doctor looks like, maybe from television or a lot of movies. But those exciting moments in the movies, those are like a small fraction of your day. Oh, yeah. It's not even like that. Most of the time you're sitting down on a computer. You're not in the midst of action all the time. It's not exciting all the time.
Yeah.
I would say it's like the minority of the time.
Yeah. But I mean, getting the experience and seeing what an actual day-to-day looks like, now it's gotten a lot easier, because you can just go on YouTube and search up day in the life of whatever, you know, day in the life of a doctor, day in the life of a resident. Yeah. You can kind of see, but even then, I think that those people only capture like
I was gonna say there's a very, very big problem with the medical influencers. Also, a lot of them make content to validate their own position. Because they want to show that they're living this great lifestyle, that they made the right decision for themselves, and so they paint the picture of what it's like to be this thing, which what these younger people need to know is the truth. Not necessarily like what like the fantasy or the reality, like they need to know like what the reality of it is. And I think there's a way to tastefully do that without making medicine seem like a villain, without making it seem like also like the God-send path.
Right.
They just need to know the truth. So you're getting that real experience, like shadowing and asking the right questions to the people who are there.
Yeah.
To find out, is this the right lifestyle for me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because social media can be very toxic.
Social media can be toxic if you, don't know how to kind of weed through it. Like one of the things I noticed is that a lot of the med students, residents, doctors, they show the highlights of their day. The videos where it's like day in the life, what I sometimes look for is like the timestamps of their day. It's like I wake up and then they show their morning routine, and then it shows them going to the hospital, and then it skips like 3 hours. Like what happened in those 3 hours? Probably nothing happened. That's why they skipped it. It's like, now I'm going to go see my patient, and now it's all exciting, and they get to like do some sort of cool thing, and then they skip another 3 hours. Like what happened in that time period?
Right.
Because nothing happened in that period. You're just probably looking at your notes or something.
Yeah, they're probably doing flashcards or
doing something.
Yeah.
But so like you see the highlight reels, so just like be cognizant.
Yeah.
And then when they post those videos, they are kind of letting themselves to, you can ask them questions. Like you can connect with them and ask them like, how is the day actually like? Like what are you doing in these time periods?
Because their videos are almost like, it's like they're creating a confirmation bias. It's their own confirmation bias.
Exactly.
Yep.
They're creating this really attractive, highlighted world.
Yeah. And they're editing for retention too. Like if the video gets boring, then people are probably going to click off.
Right.
So they have to make it very engaging and very glorious, basically.
Yeah. So I guess I think there is value though in searching for this kind of content, but it's just keep an open mind.
Know that it's like the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
Yeah.
And the best thing to do is really just to get experience and talk to many different people about it. And don't rely so much on the bad advice from like your parents if they haven't done it. Like that's a huge thing too.
Yeah. And talk to multiple providers, try to shadow multiple people also. There's this one hemonc guy I met, and I asked him why he went into hemonc, and it wasn't like because he loved hemonc. His response was, I actually dislike my job now, but I had a good hemonc mentor when I was doing my rotations, and I pursued it because I liked my mentor, which is not a good reason to pursue a specialty. But so talk to multiple people.
Right.
Yeah. So the other thing is when someone's considering a path to medicine, you kind of want to look at what they're doing with their free time, like their extracurricular activities. Because I've also had a lot of students message me and say, hey, I want to become a doctor, and I heard you need to get community service. You need to get volunteering hours. Like, how important is that? How many hours do I need to get? And all that stuff. And they're like very worried about the checklist mentality.
Yeah.
But that question already tells me that if they had free time, they wouldn't be using it in service of others. I think that's pretty huge because like in our time practicing, a lot of the times we have to be in service of other people without anyone asking of us.
Right.
Like just for an example, a lot of times I stay so late in the hospital because I know that this patient needs something more than what is outside of my duties.
Yes.
And so I go out of my way to do whatever it is they need.
Yeah.
That mentality of service is what carries you through getting your job done.
Yeah.
So like community service is just a reflection of like, what are your true intentions inside? You know what I mean?
That's a good point. Because even in ophthalmology, in my last practice, it was the same. Work through lunch, I'd stay late, try to coordinate things for patients, and you hit the nail on the head in the sense that community service is a reflection of how you're going to be as a doctor, how you're going to carry yourself, how much you're willing to put in to ultimately benefit your patients and alleviate suffering for your patients. And that's the sort of doctor I'd want for my parents too, you know?
And it's not just that mindset isn't just limited to service. Like there are a lot of times when there's something that I didn't know about a certain disease or condition, that mindset applies to learning too. It's like I could just study this much and stop, and I know I'm going to get an A on the exam, right? But the good doctors are the ones who go above and beyond. They read more and they try to synthesize everything that they learn. and it's on their own time.
Yeah.
They're trying to improve themselves on their own time.
It's because they enjoy it.
Exactly. That is a huge
I think that's the
component.
part that we're missing out is that they're doing it because they enjoy it.
They do community service because they enjoy it. They learn because they enjoy it. Everything is because
it's what once might have started off as a duty to do it has become something that they enjoy doing.
And that's the only way that you can get through such a rigorous thing, is that you have to actually enjoy it.
Honestly, I mean, like that concept applies outside of medicine too, though. If you want to sustain anything long term in your life at all, then you eventually want to get to the point where you enjoy doing it.
Right.
So medicine is it's just more important to get through because it's a long journey.
Yeah.
And if you don't enjoy it at all or don't enjoy some process of it, you're not going to make it through that long journey. Whereas like other jobs, you can spend a couple years in it, and if you quit, you quit. It's fine, you know. But this is a commitment.
Yeah.
It's a sacrifice.
Harder to quit.
Harder to quit. Very, very hard to quit. And the deeper you get into it, the more sunk cost fallacy you feel if you don't complete it. What are the paths to get to medicine?
So I wanted to become a doctor early on. I decided when I was a teenager. And it was because at that time, I was a very competitive person. And so I was usually atop my class. And so I felt, I guess there's the closer to the top that you get, the more you want to go for the top, if you know what I mean. It's like you get the momentum to keep going.
Yeah.
So I guess I had that fuel. And so I decided to commit to that path early on. And then...
So what did that route look like in terms of school?
I guess you finish high school, 4 years, and then you go to a 4-year college. This is US. You go to college for 4 years, and then you usually apply to medical school in your 3rd or 4th year of college. So I applied in my 4th year, and then when you apply, you have to go through an entire year of like interviewing and applications and stuff like that. So in that gap year, I did a master's, and everything that I was doing was trying to get myself into med school, basically.
Right.
And so it took a lot of planning ahead of time.
What was your master's in?
It was global medicine. So
Another thing that's supporting your application.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then when I went to med school, that's another 4 years of med school. And then I also did a administration degree at the same time as that. So that's another year on top of that. So I was there for 5 years. And then I graduated into a internal medicine residency, which is another 3 years. So there's a lot of years that basically spread throughout my entire 20s. And then I got my very first job, I think when I was like 29 or something, if I remember correctly. So I didn't start making money until then, just spending money for years and years until I got my first job.
So all those years of learning, what percentage of what you learned would you say you actually use in clinical practice?
I think that's a tricky question to answer, because the things I use in clinical practice the most was what I learned in residency.
Right.
Like the hands-on stuff in residency, when you actually take care of your own patients.
Yeah.
But I don't think I would understand anything in residency if I didn't take all the classes in med school. And then that requires you to take all the biology classes. And so like basically everything. You use everything that you learn, starting from college all the way to med school. It's just that they all stack on top of each other.
Right. You might not be calling on the knowledge of, osmolarity and organic chemistry, but you needed that to some extent to understand physiology and understand pathology.
Yeah.
I understand. Yeah.
Basically. So I don't know, like somewhere along the way, there are a lot of classes that could be cut. Like in college, I almost double majored in college. So I took a lot of like philosophy and like law classes and stuff like that. And that was all useless, I guess. Could cut that. But once you get into med school, a lot of the classes do seem pretty important.
Yeah.
They also start you on ethics and population health, statistics and stuff like that. I think those are pretty useful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though you don't feel like it is.
You don't feel
at the
like it
time.
is.
Those are always my least favorite classes
Yeah.
in med school to prepare for.
But when you start talking to patients, I didn't even realize, but when you start talking to patients, they ask you about like, should I be taking this medicine? How effective is this medicine? You gotta know about the research, like how efficacious it is, like how the studies are planned around, like which which medicine is better than the other one.
Right.
So statistics and it all comes together.
It does.
Pretty much.
Goes back to the whole community service thing, because you should be updating yourself on medicine, reading the new studies on your off time, and you're not getting compensated for that.
Yeah. So that was, I don't know how many years that was, 10 years easily of just studying and learning and not getting paid.
Yeah.
What about you?
For me, a little bit different routes. So I, like you, in high school in high school I was top of my class, but in college I unfortunately took the lower road of mediocrity. I was like, I'm surrounded by other people. They're probably smarter than me, so I'm just not going to try. Didn't do so well my first year in college. And it was also a mindset thing. Like, I toyed with the idea of medicine, but also didn't have the confidence to go for it. Long story short, I got my act together, but like I said earlier, I wanted to pursue research more. So I took a couple of years of just research years, working in research and also working in the tissue banking industry. And for me, like, we all have different priorities, right? Some people will want to go to medical school for the name. Like, I want to go to Harvard Medical School. Good for you, bro. But for me, I wanted to stay next to family, And to that end, I went to a DO school, which was 15 minutes away from my house. In retrospect, I probably would consider moving, because I only applied in California. I would consider moving out of state, because what I truly love is ophthalmology. I didn't know it at the time, but I think specializing, going to the school that I went to was a little bit tougher,
Being a DO school?
Being a DO school. And not because of the training, not because of the actual learning itself, but just because of resources. A lot of MD schools are part of large academic centers.
Right.
Mine was not, so the research opportunities were not there, and that's huge to get into optho residency. I think that certain MD schools do a better job of preparing their students for STEP. Like, I only had 2 to 3 weeks to study for STEP 1. And just the availability of rotations also, That, and we had to learn all the OMM stuff, which was an extra like 10 hours a week in learning manipulation on top of the normal medical stuff. And I barely use that now. Actually, I don't use it now.
So you didn't take any time off between college and application?
Oh no, I took 2 years of I was working for 2 years. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And for optho specifically, I had to do a year of medicine, which I did here in LA, which was great. And then I did 3 years of ophthalmology, which I did in Florida. And I couldn't wait to come back to California. Yeah. But I think when I originally went into medicine, when I applied for medical school, I wanted to go into PM&R actually, because I wanted, again, going back to the family thing, like the rehab doctors were great when one of my family members got sick. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to be involved in like stroke rehabilitation and stuff. But when I did my PM&R rotations, it was just very sad, and it wasn't for me. Yeah. And I stumbled upon ophthalmology, and I was like, yo, this is a different world of medicine. And I decided to pursue that. And I think if I were to not be in ophthalmology now, I don't know if I'd pursue the path again, I guess I would like to be in obesity medicine. That's the other thing that I'd consider, but I'm not sure. And I don't know what I would tell my kids,
What about your path?
Yeah, so my path, again, different from both of your paths. And that's kind of like the interesting about applying for medical school or going to medicine is there is a cookie cutter path, I guess, but there is no right or wrong path. And we get people, when we served on the admissions committee, when I did, like, you see people from all different walks of life applying. From all age ranges too, 20-year-olds up to 40-year-olds even, so there's no, it is true that it's never too late to apply, technically, but I disagree in situation wise, probably. That's a decision you have to make for yourself. But for me, high school, I did not know what I wanted to do. I was also not top of my class, unlike you guys on the other side of the table here. I was top 25. I didn't feel like the pressure that because I was the best, I could shoot for something really high. I didn't really feel that way. In high school, I focused on only one thing, which was having fun. And I did a good job of it. I think I had a lot of fun in high school. Ended up going to a 4-year college, luckily. Same college as Mike, actually. Mike and I actually had the exact same path. We went to the same high school. We went to the same undergrad at UC Irvine. We went to the same medical school at VCU in Virginia. So we
That's crazy.
we went through it's funny and like it was unplanned too. Like I didn't intend on following him through. I just happened to be like by the time that the application settled, is like, well, I got into here and I guess I'm gonna go here, you know. I wanted to go to a different college actually, but my parents did not allow me to go to UC Santa Barbara, where all my friends went. They're like, you're not going. You can't go there. And I was like, dang, all my best friends went there. But Irvine was great.
Wait, why not?
Huh?
Why not?
They just didn't want me to go there. I think it has a reputation as a pretty big party school, and it's far from home, and they don't. And my dad was like, oh, they don't have a good science program, which I think at the time I don't think they did, but it was like fair enough, sure. So he for me he was like, you going to Irvine or you going to San Diego? Because I got into both those. He's like, you can go to one of those two. I should have applied to Berkeley and other ones, but in retrospect, I didn't really. This is what I'm saying. Like in high school, I didn't really care that much about where I was going to do college. But at Irvine, kind of like you, I didn't do very well my first 2 years, honestly. Again, for a different reason though. Again, my focus was just on having fun. All I wanted to do was have fun. I was very focused on. I was in a relationship when I was in college, and looking back on it now, I regret that was such a big focus of like my headspace. I lived in fear a lot because I did the first 2 years long distance.
Oh man.
And I restricted a lot of opportunities probably just because I was always just so worried about like, how am I going to make this work, that I didn't really think about what do I want to do with my life. And it wasn't until the third year when one of my roommates I was living with decided to become an EMT. And I was like, that sounds kind of cool. Like I might try that too. So we both took a class. I became an EMT. For some reason, he didn't get a job as an EMT. I had this dream that we were going to work together, in a rig. And then he dropped out. So I just ended up getting a job on my own. And that was like my first real exposure to medicine. And I was like, this is actually kind of cool. Like getting to transport patients, getting to interact with like the whole healthcare system and team. I was like, at the time I was like, this is cool. Because I had never worked a job that was like that interconnected and that like, that there was that much thinking involved. I think I really liked the thinking part of it. How like you have to make quick decisions, you have to be on your feet, you have to think a lot. All the other jobs I had before that was like, working at a coffee shop. Or like, I don't know, like as an intramural like coach, for like college. So like there was not a lot of like real responsibility. And so being in a position where I had to make responsibilities, like, and get patients to the hospital, like run codes and stuff like that, it was like, really exciting. And so that's where when I talked to you about like, should I do medicine or not? And then I remember I asked you, was like, is this a good idea? And you were like, at the time, you were like, I like it. So I was like, okay, I guess he likes it.
I mean, I did.
Yeah, at the time,
I did like it.
At the time, he liked it. And, talking to dad too, this is back to the whole parental pressure thing. But like, I remember throwing into my dad, because we were talking about like, what should I do in college now? This is the third year. It's kind of close to when you got to figure out, what the heck is your life going to look like? And I was working as an EMT. And so I told him like, I think I might want to become a paramedic, which is, respectable career path. But my dad, being the Asian, one of the best for your kids, he's like, oh, if you're going to be a paramedic, like, why don't you just go become a doctor? And I was like, oh, I guess, like, sure. And then I remember like a couple weeks later or something, we had another conversation, and I was like, I think I want to be a physical therapist, because I was kind of like getting into fitness too at the time, and like yoga and like weight training and stuff. But I was like, again, he's like, why don't you just become a doctor? And I was like, I guess so. And then one more time I tried it. I told him I wanted to go to dental school maybe. And then again, he's like, dude, just shoot for a doctor. And so
like
I ended up
to my life.
What?
Same exact thing.
Yeah. So I was just like, I guess I have no choice but to apply. Like he believes in me, and apparently Mike did it. So that again, I realized that I guess I should do it. And so during my third year of med school, I started studying for the MCAT, and I took it. And
nice.
I was really late on the application though. Like the first 2 years of my entire undergrad experience, I had no medical clinical, volunteer, anything like that related to medicine at all.
Yeah.
So I was late catching up.
Right.
So third and fourth year, I grinded my ass off to get as much as I could. Ended up doing fairly well in the MCAT. But then I had to instead of taking a gap year to work, I actually went to a post-bac program, Virginia, for a year. There's a really cool program where like they give you a guaranteed interview at this med school if you do well.
Wow.
I ended up getting a 4.0 at that program because I just put my head down,
Yeah.
sheer willpower and effort. I knew I could do it, and so I did it. And then I got into medical school, piggybacking off of that. I got a couple of other interviews too, but ended up going to the same med school as Mike was in. There was no overlap in our training though, which kind of sucked.
Yeah.
Would have been funny to see him around like in the hospital and stuff. But yeah, I went to med school, and then again, were there
attendings who are like, I knew your brother, or like, was there any?
There was faculty,
yeah,
but the attendings, we had a very common last name, and there was a lot of Asian students.
Yeah,
so like,
speaking of which, there was another guy with the exact same name as you.
oh, that's the whole
Almost got
issue.
into med
Oh,
school
my goodness.
before you.
That was
because of
terrible.
you.
because of him.
No, it was really this was a really really funny and sad situation. But when I went to the post-bac program, there was another student with my exact same name, first name, last name, and middle initial. And for some reason, the faculty just couldn't get it right when they gave us our grades back.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes, I think it was like 4 or 5 times, we would get our exam grades mixed up.
Oh my gosh.
And I mean, he always did way worse than me.
Oh, man.
And so I would take an exam, I'd feel pretty good about it. I'd get my score, and I'd be like, damn, I tanked, dude. I was like, that's bad. But then I would obviously, I had to do my due diligence. I would go check on my score. I would go review it. And I'm like, wait, I got all these right. Like, what happened?
Yeah.
And then there was a classic mix up. But a couple of times, they would fix my score, but they didn't change his score back. So he ended up getting my scores and getting I don't think he got a 4.0. He got a pretty good GPA though. And then so he was also eligible for, applying for other programs and stuff.
What
like
a huge oversight. Also, I don't want that guy being my parents' doctor.
Yeah, he kind of just skated by. And
wasn't there some point where he purposefully changed his IDs so that he knew that the teachers would mix it up?
Maybe. I don't remember exactly. I wonder what he's up to, man. Maybe I should reach out to him. I think we're Facebook friends. Maybe.
Neurosurgeon now.
He didn't end up getting into the same program as me, if at all. I don't know if he got to any program at all, but anyways, that was a total aside tangent. But back to when I was starting medical school again, I kind of had a weird shift back to my high school days, where my first 2 years again were just mostly just focused on fun. I was because everyone had told me, and you guys kind of had said this yourself too, once you get into med school, you're pretty much going to succeed because of all the hard work you put to get there. If you just use that work ethic, you'll succeed. And so I kind of took my foot off the gas. I was like, I can just do what I'm doing and just chill. Yeah. And so the first 2 years, I was really just having fun. And that's really when we started our YouTube channel, because I had some free time, and I was like, I'm having fun, and just having all this free time, not studying.
Yeah.
What else do I want to do it with? Everyone else around me is going to get drunk and going out on the weekends and stuff. I don't really want to do that. So we started a YouTube channel as a little side hustle project. And, it's hard to pinpoint exactly the moments in your life where you realize that you discovered something really, really cool. And that was one of them for me, was just discovering that whole creation, content creation, or just making stuff. It reawakened that passion I had. And I was like, this is cool. This is what I want to do. But I think that the reason that we were able to succeed with it, and the reason that our content is so good, is because of all the experiences that we've had through medicine. So I can't even say that medicine didn't contribute, because I think it definitely did. And
medicine contributing to content creation,
contributing to developing such a deep interest and love in it. Because there's so much. Because what I like about content creation is the obsession over learning, and the obsession over getting deep into the weeds about exploring and teaching. And all of that really came from having to learn how to study and getting deep in medicine and physiology and learning all these things. I don't think I would have had the same love for content creation had we not gone to medical school.
Yeah.
Because because I'd been making stuff before that. Like I've made music for years, you know, like we make movies and stuff like that, but like none of it had as much like real impact or like love, because we didn't have that lust for learning that came with it. That was like the final piece of the puzzle that really brought content creation to like, this is it. This is cool.
I would definitely, I would say that us starting, or at least for me, starting content creation was a product of going through medical school and residency. Because I used content creation to try to solve my own problems. My study skills were not up to par. Like med school wasn't easy. So I used content creation to figure out how to learn better.
Yeah.
And then in that process, figuring out how to study, improve your grades, we were able to teach that to other people. And in teaching that, we got even better at studying. But then B, I use content creation to try to make me more productive, like in the clinic, like recording videos and trying to teach patients that way too.
Right, an efficiency standpoint.
Exactly. Like this is what diabetes is, here's what blood pressure is, this is the meds you need to take, blah, blah, blah. So I use content creation to solve my own problems. Yeah. But I don't know if I would have gotten into content creation if we didn't go down this path of medicine.
Same.
I can't know for sure.
I don't know. Using it as creativity, not just for creativity's sake, but creativity to make me a better person, through learning, through studying or whatever. And so that was the change, and I realized that like there are other ways to help people. There are other ways to teach people than just becoming a doctor. And I always thought, like I had convinced myself all those years while I was applying and struggling that the way that I was going to make the biggest impact to the most amount of people was as a doctor. I had convinced myself that was true. Yeah. And then after had started content creation, that belief was broken. I was like, there are a lot of other easier and more like different ways to reach that goal.
To impact people.
To impact more people. And I was like, that was a big frame shift for me.
Yeah.
Really dictated the rest of my medical school experience, because like it slowly started shifting. Like when you start a side hustle project, like you're like 90% work, 10% side hustle. That number was slowly starting to balance out the longer I was in medical school.
Yeah. Like
third year, it was like probably like 70-30. Halfway through third year, like 60-40. Like at the end, like by the start of fourth year, it was like 80 side hustle, 20. I was like barely doing med school stuff, because fourth year is pretty chill.
It's chill, yeah.
You just go to interviews, like you take online classes, like you're kind of just doing electives and stuff. So I was like almost already full time on the side hustle, and I was like, I had never had like such passion for what I did for something compared to medicine. I'd been doing medicine for like almost 10 years at that point already.
And so COVID hit, and then
we
no medicine.
Pretty much, yeah. Like it was just like all side hustle, and it was really interesting to discover that for myself. So, of course, like near the end of med school, when we had to start thinking about residency, though, that was a big turning point in like, what do I want for my life? And I had to reflect a lot. There was a lot of conversations with Mike, with my parents, with my faculty, my friends, everyone about like what is the point of all of this? Like we've all been tunnel vision fixated on we're going to become doctors, we're going to make it, we're going to be great. But what if that's not the point?
Ultimately, what swayed you the one way or the other? Was there like one thing, or was it like the conglomeration of just really
there was a lot of things. One of them was my brother, for sure, because I also saw that like it wasn't just my passion for doing it. Like someone else also shared that. And that was really powerful, to not be alone in like what you want. And here Mike was also wanting the same thing. I was like,
yeah,
if there's someone else, like I was pretty confident that we could do it.
Yeah.
So that was he was definitely a huge motivator. And I don't know which book it was. I think it was Oliver Berkman's book, actually, 4,000 Weeks.
Oh, great book.
If you think about how many weeks of your life left, and you only see your parents like once or twice a year, and you really only have like 10 or like a dozen times you're going to see them for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And that like really hit me. I was like, man, I've been, like you said, in medicine, like I was away from home for 6 years.
Yeah.
I was like, I see my parents like once a year, twice a year. They're old.
Yeah.
My dad's almost 70. And it really just made me like reflect. I'm like, what's more important to me, like this medicine career or like spending more time with my family? And it was that.
Yeah.
To me, I was like, this isn't worth it to me. In comparison, like I'm not gonna lie, there are a lot of parts of medicine that I really enjoy. Medicine is a very fulfilling, except like it's a great career for so many people.
Mm-hmm.
But there were more things that I disliked about it, that being one of them.
Yeah.
Than I did, and so I had to. That was a big part of my decision too.
Mm.
Was just wanting to be close to family and wanting to have time freedom.
Yeah.
Freedom in time and freedom in location to live the way I wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that Tim Urban article, right? He laid out like every single year that you have of your life remaining in like these little boxes.
Yeah.
He's like, this is how many boxes that represent your entire childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And all those boxes you get to spend with your parents. And then these are the boxes when you're an adult.
Right.
And then you get to spend like one box a year.
Yeah.
Like with your parents. Oh, he put it in months.
Yeah.
So like for some people, they get to see their parents every Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Like if at all. So how many ever years you have left, even though you're an adult for most of your life, you spend like only a fraction of it seeing your parents, or not just parents, seeing like your family, your loved ones, whoever.
Mm-hmm.
And so he laid it all out, and you saw like you only see them like maybe Christmas or Thanksgiving.
Right.
But when I was working full time and through residency, through when I was with the company, basically I worked every single Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
I worked every Thanksgiving except for like one maybe, and then I worked every Christmas. So I never saw, never saw family, and it never changed.
Right.
And I think at the time, it was probably helpful to you. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but when COVID started and everyone started like, or all the med students stopped going to school.
Everyone went virtual.
Yeah, everyone went virtual, and all the residents like started staying home. Like I graduated from residency right at the peak of COVID, so I went into the workforce. So you saw me working full time in the hospital, and you saw what it was like to be working.
Yeah. Well, I also I'd known. I mean, like I was gonna go. I had in clinicals like we work with residents, and we know what they go through and stuff.
Yeah, but yeah, it doesn't. If you can't come to terms with how life is gonna be, it's not gonna change really. And the biggest thing for me is when I was working, I was surrounded by coworkers, and I saw what my life was going to be like 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Like I'm going to be exactly like this guy. Like when I first started my job, I took over this guy's desk. Yeah, I mean he moved over to like a desk to my left, but I was like, I'm going to be like this guy when I grow up.
Desk. Yeah.
And I mean, like love for him and love for all of my coworkers, but I just didn't see myself. I didn't want to grow up to have that lifestyle. So it just that opened my eyes a lot, and it's not something that even I should have been paying more attention when I was in residency or when I was maybe in med school, but even then, like it's hard to see really what their lives are like.
Yeah.
Because
until you actually do it,
until you're actually in the hot seat. Because like I had a lot of conversations with my attendings, like, do you like your life? Like, do you get to spend a lot of time with your family? And they'll just put it up front and be like, yeah, it's good. It's a good life. It's very fulfilling, blah, blah. But not until you're in the seat. Yeah, you try being a full-time employee, you'll see like where it's headed.
Right. Another thing too is medicine is changing. Medicine is evolving such that it's becoming less and less lucrative from multiple standpoints to become a physician, to be a physician, you know, from the money standpoint to the autonomy standpoint to the time standpoint. Like it's the deal is getting less sweeter as time goes on because there's just a whole movement towards managed care, efficiency, mid-level providers. And with that comes all of these negative things to the physician group as a whole. And we don't have, unlike nurses, we don't have like a union. If we were to call out, like, we can't do that, you know? Doctors don't call out of the hospital. Doctors don't go on strike, you know? So there's no one advocating for us either,
right?
You know? And it's that in every specialty. You see anesthesiologists, CRNA, ophthalmology, optometry. Love my optometry colleagues, but in every state they're also pushing for more the ability to do procedures, lasers, surgery, stuff like that. And I think a lot of people meet me and they're like, oh, John must be super rich. He is an ophthalmologist. You know, I have gotten paid a whole lot less as an attending ophthalmologist compared to mid-level providers. Yet I take on all of the risk from a medical legal standpoint.
Right.
You know, that's not cool.
Yeah, you're the highest level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to communicate to people out there that it's not as you absolutely should not go into medicine for the money. And you will be sacrificing a lot of time and memories with family, you know?
Right. But if you do really enjoy, like we're talking about, the actual work of a doctor, the responsibility, and you would enjoy being in that hot seat, like we're saying.
Yes.
You enjoy the hustle of it, then it is
worth it.
It's very worth it.
It is worth it.
I think it would be. And, you know, a lot of my friends who are in it, they're now that they're in residency, like they love it.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm making money now. Like I get to treat patients. Like I'm in charge. Like this is great.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy for them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think if I were not in ophthalmology, I'd be not happy, but I'm pretty happy right now. Yeah. So if you guys were not in medicine and you guys were not currently doing the current side hustle, which is teaching,
The full hustle now.
the full hustle, yeah. What do you guys think you'd be doing?
Super hard to answer that question.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't know what we know now.
Yeah.
You know, kind of thing.
That's fair.
I always wanted to be some kind of creative musician, artist of some kind. But now that we have side hustle to full hustle, the only thing I can think of was I would just try to be some other kind of entrepreneur. Like entrepreneurship is just that is, I think, the most fulfilling thing that I've ever done.
Yeah.
I think that is like the epitome of self-improvement. It is the ultimate self-improvement journey is entrepreneurship. And that's why
I mean, if you had to ask me right now, then I would say the same thing.
Yeah, that's
an entrepreneur. Right. But before, when I was still in college, my backup plan was to go to dental school. Like I already had that application lined up and ready to go if I didn't make it in. And if not that, then it would be somewhere in healthcare.
Yeah.
Because I really liked that field.
Yeah.
Back then, though, when we were applying, content creation wasn't really a thing. YouTube wasn't really a thing. I think like Mr. Beast and MKBHD and those big guys, like the guys who have been around for many, many years, they didn't even start when we were in med school or when we started after college.
Yeah.
Like
Mr.
around
Beast
that time.
probably started by then.
Maybe. Yeah. His first year or something like that. If we're like tracing me like going back 12 years.
Yeah.
I don't think he barely started. But like the concept wasn't even there.
Yeah.
Being able to make money as a content creator wasn't there.
Wasn't even on our radar.
Yeah. So it's hard to compare. It's hard to say. I mean, if you're going to ask the next question, like, would you go back and do it again? Then yes, I would go back and do it again.
Yeah.
Because there was no other alternative that I saw.
Knowing my dumb self, I would have done the same thing.
But I liked it though.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the path.
Yeah.
Just reflecting back and seeing where we are now, you can't change, like you can't make content creation just, start earlier, if you know what I mean.
I think it's all about the journey. And that's something that I see in both of you guys. Like you're talking about how like you wouldn't be able to do content creation without medicine, but I think that there's something in your guys' character that lends you both to being successful in both, and it's all, like you said, you would do this again because it's all about the journey. It's all about learning and getting better and becoming better entrepreneurs and becoming better content creators.
Yeah, definitely. I think the heart of content creation and the heart of a doctor is learning and teaching, just that cycle over and over and over again. Like I get so much enjoyment out of just doing that. And being a doctor and being forced to explain so many complicated ideas to a patient who's never been through medical school, that was really hard to begin with. But when we finally got the hang of it, it made YouTube videos so much easier to do. And then vice versa, just explaining things, breaking it down, learning more, teaching again. that cycle is just it's so fun.
Yeah. I'll say I feel me reviewing my cataract surgery cases, watching videos of other people's techniques and stuff, I feel very similar. That feeling of me doing that feels very similar to me making and editing videos. Like it's very like both states of flow, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Editing videos was my way of getting flow too. I loved it.
Yeah. I don't necessarily think that the growth-oriented mindset is necessary for doctors, though. Because I have some friends who are just like, I just want to be a radiologist. I want to go and read scans and go home and not think about it ever again. And they have no intention of becoming the best radiologist of all time or anything like that.
But I would also play that. I would argue also that that's what sets an exceptional doctor apart. You know, if there's a doctor who goes home, reads up, tries to become a better radiologist or ophthalmologist, they're going to be a little bit better than the next guy. You know, like my complication rate might be 0.0001% better or lower than the next surgeon's, but if you do thousands of cases in your career, those are lives affected, you know? So just the smallest amount matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you kind of need to be a self-improver to be a doctor. Like there's a trap that you can easily fall into, is that if you're trying to get in med school and you're just looking at all the requirements, like I need to get 4.0 GPA, I need to get 1,000 hours of volunteer, I need to get letters of rec, and you just treat that as a checklist, then you get into this mentality of, if I do this, then I'm good. You know, like if I just make all these things, then I'll be fine. And then you never try to do more than what you're asked. And that is not a self-improver.
I agree. But I'm saying like there are doctors who can make it, who are like that.
Yeah.
I'm saying like they work with, they see a means to an end. If I go through residency, I become an attending radiologist or whatever, I don't have to do I don't have to ever work like harder ever again. That's the means to an end mindset. And that's not a self-improvement mindset.
That's not. Yeah. I think that's I agree with you. And there's not just doctors. There's so many people who are already employed and they've been employed for like 10 years. They get tenured or whatever in their university, and they stop learning. Basically, they stop improving on what they know, and they stop improving on their techniques. They've like settled into their job. I get to do the same thing every single day and I'm good at it. So there are those people.
Yeah. I think the real question that John, a better question to ask them, like, what would you do if you can go back? I think a different question would be like, if you couldn't be a doctor right now, what would you do? Because that at least gives you all the knowledge that you currently have.
Right.
Like all of a sudden doctoring was off the table. Like you lost your license tomorrow.
It would just be YouTube. I mean, like, even if I don't have any subscribers, I think it would just help me. What I've been finding also, like you guys, is it's just helping me organize my thoughts, you know? Like I used to read self-improvement books and I don't know, I can't tell you how many I've read. You know, you could look at my Kindle. I've gone through all of them. But things that I've truly taken and incorporated into my life, you know, probably less than 15%, you know, but at least now putting it into an actual physical form makes me sort of understand it better. But also it's kind of like, I can't be an imposter. I have to live this also,
right?
You know? This is probably different for all of us, but what was your guys' favorite thing about medicine and what is your least favorite thing about medicine? I can go first. I'll go first. Okay. So my favorite thing is probably surgery. And that's just because it's something about physically impacting a patient's life. You know, like I just like working with my hands. I like seeing tangible products of my work. And that's part of the reason why I like making videos also. So that's my favorite thing. My least favorite thing, this is probably worse for you, but my least favorite thing is probably just like paperwork, dealing with insurance companies, dealing with filling out DMV forms. Yeah, I think that's my least favorite thing. Just like the minutia of just like stuff that doesn't contribute to anyone's life, you know? Like you feel like that's part of the reason why boredom sucks, right? Because you're just like, oh, I'm not like producing anything. Well, that's what a lot of paperwork in medicine is. You're just like appeasing like United Healthcare is like some person who's not even in medicine, who's just like trying to save money, you know? Yeah.
Yep. That would be my worst thing.
You're saying like just to clarify, like the favorite and like least favorite, like in terms of like responsibilities?
Anything. Like what do you enjoy
aspect.
and what do you hate about medicine? Yeah.
You can go next.
Well, I enjoy learning, but I don't know. I guess I enjoy studying.
Now.
I did before. Like, I don't know if you guys ever had this, but I got into flow a lot when I studied.
Sure.
Like, it felt so nice to just wake up, even on a weekend sometimes. Like, you know, you have like a midterm or final coming up. You wake up, you pack your backpack, pack your lunch, go to the library, find like your nice perfect spot. Get your nice lo-fi playlist going, and you just sit there and you just study. It's just like so relaxing sometimes. So that was one of my favorite parts about it. One of the least favorite part is the notes charting for patients. And since I was a hospitalist, I was the one who was like the point guy, like the central doctor who had to coordinate the care between all the other doctors. And it was just, I mean, it was frustrating to see like a specialist come in and they would drop like 2 sentences and then I have to summarize everything and then like find out every single part of this guy's history or this patient's history from like day 1 of their disease to now. Yeah. And so my notes were always, they would take so long sometimes. Yeah. And no, I would write notes for myself and then other people would have to read them. And then if they're not complete, then people call me up and like, hey, you need to get more information on these notes. You spend a lot of time working on notes. I would say like, I don't know, probably 70% of your 80% of your time just typing on the computer.
I just want to add to that also. Part of the reason I'm known to take like really thorough notes, like my medical documentation is really on point. And a part of that is is this fear of this increasing rate of medical legal liability. You know, like there are a lot of people out there just out to get you. You know, even if you're like the most well-intentioned doctor, you did everything right, like people are just out to get you sometimes, you know. And it's I just feel as though in recent times it's we're all of us physicians are just CYA more, you know, like we're just documenting things because we know that the prevalence is increasing, you know. But sorry, just to add.
My favorite thing, and this probably speaks to why I did apply for psychiatry. I really enjoyed just talking to patients. I really like talking to patients. Like I would just spend, I think at first it just ended up being like a way for me to avoid doing extra work from the residents. They'd be like, "Oh, go check up on this patient," and I would just go check up on the patient. But I just sit down and have like a full like half-hour conversation with them and just like ask about how things are going.
I'm sure they appreciated it.
Oh, the patients loved it, but then I get back and they'd be like, "What the heck were you?" And I was like, "Oh, I was just asking a history and all that stuff." But that's when I really realized I'm like, because especially in psychiatry, like more than anything, I found out like what being a doctor is just. It's not even so much taking care of them. The half of taking care of them is listening to them. Yeah. And I just like as a medical student, you really can't do much besides listen. And so I found that like, oh, this is how I can provide value. I can be here. I can listen. I can find out. And like listening to me was really fun because you get to learn about these different walks of life, you know? Yeah. And it's really eye-opening, especially in psychiatry, like how some people live. It's crazy. I'm so blessed and it's like so grateful that I get to like be a student and like, you know, see my friends and do things. People are like drowning in responsibility, in debt, in financial situations. Their relationships are toxic. Everything is just so like out of whack for a lot of people. Yeah. But that was my favorite part about medicine was just hearing stories. Yeah. And it speaks to why I applied for psychiatry. Completely ended up deferring it anyways, the position, but that's that was where I found fulfillment in it. But then on the flip side, then like after, if you have a long conversation with the patient, then the documentation's even longer too. So I would probably also agree that was like one of the worst parts.
Yeah.
But I don't want to cop out that answer and say the same thing as you guys, but I will say another thing was I really hate the lack of freedom. That is a huge thing. It's just like you don't really have control over your schedule.
Yeah.
Even as an attending.
Nope.
So I hate having to report to somebody.
And
I'm a very bad employee.
Yeah. And there's a huge decline in private practices now. Just the way healthcare is moving, it's all large practices and HMO managed care. So you'll work for Kaiser, work for really large private practices that aren't really private practices, but rather private equity, you know. So I think that model of like being your own, owning your business, owning your practice, being independent, being your own boss, running your clinic, having your own panel, like that is becoming more and more uncommon in medicine today.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, just not having control of your life. I missed a bunch of weddings because even as an attending, I couldn't go to because I couldn't get it off. Like sometimes you have a set schedule, at least for me. You have to bargain with your coworkers. Hey, if you take this day, then I'll take this day for you.
Right.
And sometimes I had to do like, hey, if you take this day, then I'll ask the other person to switch with you so that you can switch with me. It's just like you have to go like, jump through all these hoops just to get a day off.
Yeah.
So that you don't get control of it. It's so annoying.
What sucks is like if you have one, you can't have the other, right? So it's like if I got to go home for Thanksgiving, I know I'm not going home for Christmas. You know?
Yeah.
And you're sympathetic to your physicians too, you know, like they have families, they have lives. So I think the time and the family thing was a huge thing for me also, just thinking about also specialties, you know, like
Yeah. I mean, I never even started residency, so I didn't even have to deal with that as much as you guys did, obviously. But even as a student, I already felt the time restriction or the freedom of your schedule being a big problem for me.
Yeah. Tax sucks, man. Like
Tax,
yeah. So like I remember as a medical student, I was like looking up salaries on Medscape and whatever, and I was like, okay, well, if the starting salary for an ophthalmologist is like a couple $100,000, then I'll be able to buy my mom a Tesla, my dad a Tesla, and me a Tesla first year out of residency.
Yep.
Well, I mean, I'm like a few years out. I still can't afford a Tesla, man.
Yeah.
Tax is like 50%. And
well, yeah, I mean, the benefit
If
of
you're in California.
yeah.
the upside is you make a lot of money, but the downside is you're in the highest tax bracket.
Right. So I really think it's not as lucrative as one might think. Back to that point.
At least it's not like you're just gonna get this giant lump sum of money all of a sudden. You know, you didn't just inherit like giant wealth where you can just spend it and splurge. It's like you have to accrue it.
Right. You accrue it. You have to be smart with your money. It's not like one day you graduate from residency and you're like driving a Lambo, you know? I almost would say, you know, first of all, it's hard to make a living in California, like as a non-physician, but I do feel like as a physician in California, we're like upper middle class, you know, like we're definitely not in like the top tier from an economic standpoint, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and the doctor salary ranges pretty significantly depending on the specialty. Definitely lower for residency.
Oh yeah.
Residency, I think it's like what, like 50K to
Like
80K,
50K a year.
50 to 80K for each progressive year in fellowship and stuff like that. But
so I guess one other annoyance is you will be dealing with people who think that you're super duper rich,
right?
And you'll have to deal with that social mentality, you know?
Yeah. No, I think it's a good point you mentioned about. This is again tying back to anyone who's thinking about going into medicine. Is you have to detach from any perceived prestige or any perceived notion about what a doctor is.
Absolutely.
And if you really want to do it, you have to focus on what do they do and do I want to do what they do? Because again, like you said, people have these, I think a lot of people think that like a doctor, like if you're a doctor, you can wear this badge of honor, like I am this prestigious, this amazing healer of people. But if you really go out and like talk to people, like doctors don't have that reputation with a lot of people. A lot of people actually don't like doctors.
All right. So thanks for joining us on the show. Everything will be in the show notes, and we'll see you next time.
Lately, memories are fresh on my mind.